Speaking moistly. Speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly. Speaking moistly.
Welcome to Speaking Moistly. I'm trying to pause the darn video and it wouldn't pause for me. Oh well. With me as usual is Gilly on a Thursday. How you doing today, Gilly?
Hey, pretty good. Yourself?
Things keep sliding. Things keep getting a little bit worse, measurably worse. Things keep changing quickly. What about an election? Do you think we're going to have an election? You think it's going to happen?
Oh, I think we're definitely going to have one. It's just a matter of timing.
Sorry, an election.
Because an election.
Election.
Yeah. Because because the timing, like to have it right now may not work into all of the necessary conditions, shall we call them, for an election.
Mm-hmm.
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
The right kind of election.
Well,
the kind that,
the Trudeau wins. See,
yeah,
yeah,
the guarantee. And I mean, it's really hard for him not to right now because we've got massive empty nets and nobody's even facing them and they have no idea where the puck is. So
yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Like, I think that O'Toole would institute a lot of the similar policies. It looks like he would abandon some of the speech attacks that Trudeau is doing. So, I mean, if we go to an election right now, O'Toole may rise in the polls if he makes it about free speech. We may see a change of guard. I've seen polls that put Trudeau 7 points up on the Conservatives. I've seen polls that say he would have a hard time getting a majority. 7 points up is usually a majority, right? But yeah. I've seen conflicting polls. Anybody who weighs in on it says Trudeau's on track for majority. I don't see it. He's screwed up so many times that people are done.
But the problem is, as much as he screws up, Aaron O'Toole seems to screw up just as badly.
Yeah.
I don't think it's so much that what's going to wind up happening is that people will vote Liberal that would normally vote Conservative. I think people just won't come to the polls. It's like, what choice do we have?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And the new parties look promising, but until they get their full act together, we got nothing.
Yeah. Well,
so
if there's an election, I've heard there's an election going to be called on Sunday. I've heard there's an election going to be called a week Sunday. So if the election's called this Sunday, I've heard voting day will be September 13th. Jody Wilson-Raybould's book comes out September 14th. If it's called on the 15th, which is a week later, election day would be on the 20th, and presumably Wilson-Raybould's book would come out on the 14th too. So is the election calling specifically to sideline Raybould's tell-all? And a lot of people. Okay, let's talk about the tell-all. Like, do you think that's why he's doing that?
It could be. It could be that he's painted himself into a corner with taking the Speaker of the House to court. It could be all of these different investigations into all of these different things that he wants to end. There's a whole slew of reasons.
He can't prorogue Parliament to stop the Speaker in the court. I that's a big one. Does that end automatically if there's an election? That right there could be the linchpin. That could be why. And I think because O'Toole's basically the same, they could assume O'Toole will limit speech on the internet for your safety because those alt-right people are very dangerous and we've got to get them and stuff.
There's so many of them and they're just scary. If you like freedom, you're now alt-right. So the Overton window is not just moved, it's like gone.
Yeah.
It's just forget about it. There isn't one. It's like either you agree with us or you're a right-wing supremacist of something.
That's basically the rhetoric. There's
no gray.
Absolutely no gray area. So what about Bernier and Sloan? Do you think O'Toole is going to retain all of the Albertan seats? Do you think the NDP is going to make inroads? Are Derek Sloan and Maxime Bernier going to eat Aaron O'Toole's lunch, or are they just going to bleed it to the Liberals?
It's really hard to say because there's a couple of things going on. You have Aaron O'Toole, who has absolutely abandoned his base and certainly has pissed off a lot of Albertans. And you've got Sloan and Bernier saying things that the West likes to hear. Yeah. So what happens to that in the grand churn of things really depends. But Aaron O'Toole, I mean, I know if the polls look close or it looks like the Liberals are going to get a majority, I will tell you, dime to donuts, Albertans will vote CPC just to get rid of Trudeau at this point.
Yeah, but it won't.
That is everything that I'm hearing from people.
Yeah, and I could see people.
It's like the lesser of two evils. The West has, you have to understand the mentality of the West is that we have no power anyway, really. Mm-hmm. All we can do is mitigate harm. Mm-hmm. So if we can mitigate the harm that Trudeau does by making sure that he has a minority, or at least not giving him anything, that's what we're going to do, because we can't actually fully influence the vote. We don't have enough seats out here to do anything about it.
Do you think that's by design? I think there's probably a reason for that. Eh?
Oh, yeah, because there's pieces, there are parts, there's actually a riding in Alberta that is almost twice the size it's supposed to be.
Really?
Yeah, population-wise, nearly twice.
Really?
So it may even be over twice at this point.
Wow, yeah.
So, and I mean, there's other places that in Ontario, well, not so much Ontario, but definitely in Quebec, where the ridings are significantly smaller. I think it's supposed to be 100,000 per riding. 100,000 citizens per riding. And there's some that are 60 to 80. Last I checked, okay, there were 60 to 80,000 in ridings in Quebec where they have a seat. But in Alberta, we have ones that are 140,000, 180,000.
So you're
like
saying
it's
it could
crazy.
be split into two seats because it's representation. So
yes.
It could be split into two seats, increasing the seats out in Alberta, but they're not doing that.
Yeah.
But in Quebec, they're servicing 50 or 60,000 people. In Alberta, they're servicing twice that.
And PEI, the Maritimes as well. They have very small ridings, population-wise, but they have the, and not that they have a lot of seats either, but they do throw their weight behind the Liberals more often than not.
Yeah. So one of the arguments on Twitter, and Twitter's such a dumpster fire for free speech, etc. But the whole internet is now too. So, but what are you going to do? But the argument on Twitter is that if you don't vote for O'Toole or the CPC, then you're basically voting for Justin Trudeau. And I don't know about that. Like, there are a lot of people who like. The NDP is a vote for Justin Trudeau. The Bloc is a vote for Justin Trudeau. The Liberals are a vote for Justin Trudeau. The CPC, again, seem to have a different take on things, on some things, not on all things. And Aaron O'Toole said, I'm definitely going to not do that carbon tax thing. And then he was like, except that I'm going to do that carbon tax thing.
But we're going to call it something different.
So I understand. Yeah. I understand the kind of the old standby of we can't let that Trudeau guy back in, so we've got to vote that CPC dude. But I think that it was like a massive failure last time, and we got so close, Dominion level close. Just swing and a miss, right? You got popular vote, and you didn't win the election. You guys, you just got to get a bit more organized, like those Liberals, and get like machines that definitely swing things like that for you, right? And don't audit them. So we've got a situation where, like, I understand. It is not easy. It is the kind of default position to say we can't let him keep destroying the country, Trudeau. Yeah. And so the best chance of ousting him is CPC. I understand that logic. It's very straightforward. But I feel like it was tried and failed because it was expected and countered.
And if that message can get out, and I think the biggest thing, and this is like, okay, so the Twitter wars that I've been involved in, sometimes as a guilty pleasure, sometimes as, just kind of innocently put something out and got caught up in a wave of craziness.
Madness.
But here's the thing, and it's something I've been talking about since Bernier first declared the PPC. I think if the people who are supporters of the CPC, PPC, True North, which is Sloan's new thing. If we could just go, okay, you know what? We might not agree on everything. The vehicles don't have to be the same. But our plan is the same place. We want to get rid of Trudeau. So if we can all come together and just work together and go, okay, we might be rivals to a certain extent, but we need to come together as a group and say, this is the thing that we want, is to get rid of Trudeau. Yeah. And if we can all work together, we can make that happen. They have the NDP and the Liberals and the Greens on the one side. The Bloc, I think, are always just kind of mercenaries. They'll go with whoever is going to help out their interests.
Very opportunistic, eh? Very opportunistic, the block. It's very interesting to
They
watch.
they are.
Where did they
are.
come
So
from? Who is they? How are they like, boom, right? Like, oh, we're the block. Welcome.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, we're against everything Canadian and only for Quebec. So you know, so how are
SNC
you a federal
Lavalin, baby.
party? I thought there were like things against that, but anyway,
So
I digress.
the PPC. I want to talk about what you're talking about. The PPC put out. Martin Mass put out a statement that said, like, we offered a chance for Derek to join our party, and we don't really know why he didn't join our party. And I don't want to get into that, but this is
I was going to say, well, I
yeah,
have some thoughts.
I was going to say no, we won't talk about that. But the thrust of it was like we're not going to cooperate. We're not going to cooperate with other parties.
Which is
like,
just
that's not how our system
asinine
works.
and stupid. It is asinine and stupid.
Right, and I think that it's right to a certain degree, except that like that's how politics works, right? And so
Sure,
Trudeau,
point your cannons at the right marker.
I agree with with that again to a certain point. But I think that it is very interesting and notable to see that we've got people who all have overarching the same goal. Like,
yep.
we want to a return to, I mean, 2015
fiscal
life.
responsibility.
2015 life would be a dream, right?
Exactly.
And that wasn't even all that good. But like, we'd like to return to that time when you could say things like, and not be prosecuted for whatever.
Saying a word, mean words. I mean, come on.
All sorts of stuff, right? Like,
sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. However, in the new, whatever we call this, clown world, words have been now turned into weapons so that the sticks are allowed to beat you, because the words somehow have become more dangerous than the sticks and stones.
Yeah, well, they're saying that they need to police online speech on the internet while illegal guns and gun crime are running rampant all across Toronto. And it's like, oh, we're trying to deal with that. How are you trying to deal with that exactly? By limiting the amount of legal guns that farmers can own. It's like, well, that doesn't seem like it's going to address the issue, does it? So,
no, that's not. That's the polar opposite of addressing the issue. That's like taking away the ability for some people to protect themselves and to do what they need to do on their land. Hunters to hunt and be able to feed themselves.
Yeah, if you've read the Agenda 2030, all that's coming new. We're not going to be allowed like 5 kilometers away from your home. Sorry, buddy, you better have papers. Papers, please. You're a climate risk. There's a climate emergency. You can't leave your house. There's a COVID emergency.
Sounds familiar. But
Hunger Games.
Where have we seen this happen before?
Indeed. Yeah.
I'm sure.
We live in a weird convergence of the Hunger Games and Demolition Man and V for Vendetta. It's all
okay. V for Vendetta and Demolition Man, two of my favorite movies of all time.
They're wonderful. You don't want to live there though.
No,
you're not John Spartan.
Not at all. Exactly.
Go to the social credit machine and swear at it for toilet paper. Okay, let's talk about the healthcare system. Did you know this? This has been sitting up the whole time we've been talking about the election, or whatever, it doesn't matter. Tedros looking at us. Did you know that Canada's healthcare system isn't the best in the world, according to this study, and which is a flawed study?
Shock and awe.
I mean, who knew? But yeah, Canada's health system ranked second last among 11 countries. Report. Do you know?
Because we're neighbors with the U.S.
Yes. Do you know what the worst country, like worse than us, is?
Well,
you know, because we talked to the We don't know what the best country is, though. The worst country,
because that was my question. Who's the worst?
The U.S. The United States is the worst. Those evil U.S. people with their
we're being painted with the same brush.
But
we're just
this is the funny part, though. Like, this is like the punchline. It says Canada also ranked 9th out of the 11 countries for access to care, with the report citing the country's healthcare system's affordability and timelines as reasons for its placement. So like timelines I could see, but the affordability, like, I mean, it's expensive, but we pay all that in taxes, so it's free, baby. Yeah. I don't see any of that. Cool sound. What's the national debt today? Oh, I don't care.
Yeah, well, it's nearly twice the normal GDP. So
not the 2021 adjusted GDP of like the
exactly.
The one where
I keep pointing that out to people. It's like, okay, normally our GDP is 2.2. The last year it's cut at least in half, and our debts are now more than half.
Yeah. it's like when you have like
Nobody's seeing a problem.
it's like when you have a stock or something that you're watching and like the ticker's like going up and then it's like half of what it should be and you're like tapping the screen. You're like refresh. Why aren't you like you're not in line? Or when you watch if you bought XRP high and then you're like what the heck? What's going on? Anybody who had Bitcoin at 66,000 or $66 million? Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Whoops. Don't gamble with money you can't lose, kids.
Exactly. So yeah, this is where are they getting the numbers? Like, and who's number one? Who's doing the best job? Is it France under Macron or Germany?
France might be really good, actually. Well, I've heard good things about France's healthcare, but regardless, it doesn't really matter.
And where's the UK on that list?
The UK doesn't exist anymore after Brexit. They just ignore them. They're like, you're done. You're too small, King and Queen of England. Get out of here. Not really. They're still involved. They've got London.
I was gonna say.
No, I was kidding.
Yeah, well, I know they keep trying to take London away from London, but it's not working.
No. London is a financial center beyond what our financial system looks like. Like there are powers and levers of control above our financial system, and London is where one of those is, and it's not going. Brexit, whatever. Like the EU is worse off. I know
the EU was trying to coax the banks and stuff to leave London and go to various other countries, and it did not work.
Nope. London is integral, and not that I know exactly why. I can't explain exactly why. The other is Washington D.C. and the other is the Vatican. Like those are three seats of power that are all. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Or you're like, stop talking. It's going to get banned on YouTube. Maybe.
I'm like, well,
yeah, well, I mean, they'll have to do research into that. I haven't said anything explicitly. Okay, Patrick Phillips, in our terrible 10th out of 11th healthcare system, this is a good doctor. He says, as a physician, I will not participate in any form of coercion into medical tests or treatments or inhumane practices or inhumane public health measures. The Declaration of Geneva that guides medical people. And I think it's interesting when doctors in Canada are saying, hey, I feel it's important to post these kind of things, right? Like that's not encouraging, right? I don't like that.
It's this is an entire mess, and it's going in a very bad place. And I keep saying that the people who are ignoring this the hardest, it seems, are the people who are trying to enforce the subjugation of humanity, because what always winds up happening. Eventually, it takes a while, but eventually it's them that wind up with the guillotines and the nooses and all of those kinds of things. Those are the ones that wind up suffering. It's like trying to push down a ball full of air under the water in a pool or something. It's eventually it's going to slip past, right? And that's, if you look at human history, that has always happened. However, and it's never good for the powers that be.
Well, it's never good for the powers that be on a long enough timeline, but on a shorter timeline, like after the Holodomer, the powers that be were pretty effing happy with themselves. They're like, look what we accomplished, right? Yay, good job, everyone. And then, things went sideways. And I'm not saying that's good. I'm saying that terrible, terrible atrocities have happened. And to put it into context, like Stalin killed a lot of people. And then we were like, hey, can you help us kill that or, destroy that other bad guy we'll ignore that whole thing. Wink.
Yeah.
Right. I watched Oliver Stone's American History. I think it was Oliver Stone's. It was on Netflix. And while I was watching it, I was like, I can't believe this is on Netflix still. But the first 3 episodes were things that happened before I was born. And they're like in the 1940s and 50s, went from FDR to Truman to after Truman, Eisenhower. And so what I found really interesting was like it starts out with Stalin was like a terrible, awful dictator who killed way more people than Hitler. And we were like, hey, man, what's up? So weird.
We want to be friends, dude.
Can you help
us?
Come on. You seem to know how to kill people, like really well.
Yeah. Better than that guy.
Yeah.
And we don't like that guy for some reason.
Yeah.
So let's,
I think
you come kill more people over here.
I was saying to a friend of mine today at lunch, actually, I think that we know our history the same way how somebody else's day at an amusement park went. Like you go to an amusement park with your family, right? And like say you've got teenage kids and you're like, oh, have a good time, we'll see you soon. And then everybody gathers up and you say, how did did you have fun? Oh yeah, the bat was great and this was great and that was great. And they don't tell you about the 2 hours they spent in line. They don't tell you about like the funnel cake that got dropped or whatever. Like you miss some parts of the history. And I think that our history, the history that we know as like fact, I think that that's a bad analogy. And like I think we even know a more fractured, less real version of our history. And I think that there's a massive problem because not only are humans amnesiacs, like we forget very easily, 2 weeks-ish, but generationally, like we could be sold anything. We could be sold like wind will power this whole country. It's like, oh yeah, really? Okay.
Yeah, because it's windy here, right? All the time. Yeah.
So that's
it's like it's like take your cell phone out on a cold winter's day and hope that it keeps working for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, right. For sure.
Dreaming.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody who's a smoker in Canada knows. Who was a smoker in Canada knows, right? Like your cell phone battery's dying. You're not pulling that thing out while you're smoking outside.
Nope.
So apparently the third jab has been available in Israel for over 60s for a week. Only less than 1% of people have gotten it. So this is boosters. And we're not going to touch on vaccines and stuff. I don't know anything about anything. But the Israeli people, they're staying away from a booster shot. And that seems notable. Seems like people should know about that, I think. Right? What can you say about that that's not going to get us banned from YouTube?
Is there anything? I think we need to start speaking in code.
Maybe. Carry forward.
Come up with new words for things.
Yeah, code words. Oh, well.
Because, what can you say about it? Like, okay, so people aren't interested in doing this. Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah, right.
Because it's such, a good thing to keep injecting your body with stuff that doesn't seem to be working anyway.
That's an interesting
and yet it's like doing
aspect. That like all the media is like pointedly ignoring this giant elephant sitting right behind them. And like the elephant's like the trunk is like hitting them and they have to adjust their cameras and stuff and they're like, but they're not going to
hitting the back of their head going stupid.
They're not going to say anything about the elephant that's in the shot. Can we just back up and move over to the left so it's just gray and not like an elephant foot and a tail? Like you want me to stand closer to the thing I'm not talking about? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm seeing stuff and I haven't gotten into all of it because there's sort of long press conferences and stuff that's happening down in the States where it's looking like, there's some senators and stuff going on too. And it's looking like the cracks are starting to really show.
They don't care.
However,
they don't care.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's kind of like sunk costs, right? Nobody wants to admit we were all fools.
This is like this is like the part. This is the moment in James Bond. This is the moment in the poker game where you're all in and the other guy's all in and everybody else is all in and you're the last two at the table and the other guy's like, you know what? I'm gonna raise you and you're like, what are you gonna do? And he's like, I'm gonna put my house in. And you're like, okay, I put my house in too. And then like we're just upping the ante and it's like, what? For what?
Why? Where's the reality in all of this whole scenario? Like, when do we take the feelings out and start looking at the facts, reason, logic? Those old-fashioned things that actually help things happen in a good way.
It's like my poker analogy is they just want to keep the hand going and they're just going to throw anything in. Like they don't want to show their cards. Nobody wants to show their cards, and they just want to keep inflating this massive pot, and that's it. Like there is no step 5. Step 5 is cases are back to whatever, and we have to lock down. This I found. I talked about this on my show this morning, and I found it very frustrating. Guelph and the Wellington Dufferin Public Health in Guelph, Wellington Dufferin, are sharing the vaccination status and percentages at high schools. So Public Health publishing vaccination information in Guelph area high schools. So they list a couple of schools. One is Centennial and it's got a 1 dose of 83% and 2 dose of 71%. And then they can contrast that with a private school that has a very low rate. And I think this is violating their medical privacy. Like, is this not violating your medical privacy if you attend any of these schools?
And it seems like something that has nothing to do with them. I mean, whenever you post like what the grades are coming out of a certain school or whatever, that's something that is in the school's wheelhouse that, they should be it's fair, but somebody's medical history is nobody's business.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other day, it's probably last week now, I got this, it was a survey from the CNIB asking all these questions. And in the first part of it, there was something like, well, I got to I think it was page 4 of these questions. On the first page, they're saying we're not going to ask about your COVID vaccine, like if you've had the vaccine or not. Status, yeah. And then by page, like I say, it was like page 4 or 5 of these questions. There's about 3 questions per page. They were asking, have you now had 1 or 2 doses of the COVID?
What is your vaccine status? What?
And if you haven't, will you? And then today I got an email from them saying that they have this whole new COVID-19 dashboard for people with disabilities to go and get real information from real sources. And it's like,
interesting.
Huh.
Yeah, well, the people with disabilities...
and it's kind of like this. It's like, who cares what your rights are? Who cares what our mandate is?
Yeah.
It's everything is about COVID, everything. And if you're not complying or you're not willing to talk about your compliance, well, then we've got a problem. And it wouldn't matter whether I was vaxxed or not. I have no intention of sharing my status with anybody. Mm-hmm. It's none of your business. Yep. Unless it's my doctor.
Yep.
No, absolutely not. None of your business. This has been a thing forever.
Yeah.
So why are they forcing it? Why are they doing this to shame kids in school?
Yeah, well, I mean, last week they were saying that they're going to have different standards for testing for kids who are vaxxed versus unvaxxed. And then this week they said there's going to be no difference for kids in classrooms between vaxxed and unvaxxed. So they have access to everything. But if you get like the more special or the more extracurriculars you do, the more things you're exposed to. So more potential for being removed from class or whatever, right? So, but then you could be out for 20 days. So it's like, if you're not sick, if you're just a close contact of somebody else who tests positive, and that person doesn't need to be sick, right? So
they're encouraging kids to not be involved in extracurriculars. Mm-hmm. Why?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, the schooling has been a disaster. It's been an absolute unmitigated, complete travesty. What they've done to kids has been unforgivable, what these people have done. It's just, honest. Like, I've talked to the public health. I've talked to anybody who listens to me at the board. You can't take somebody's body agency away. Like, I find it so offensive that in Canada, like, we're masking 4-year-olds. Toronto Public Health is masking, like, junior kindergartens. To protect other people when we can't get into it. We could because YouTube will get upset. But
my question is, why are we responsible for protecting other people instead of just being responsible for protecting ourselves?
Because if
we are comfortable with,
right? Because that doesn't work with the narrative. That doesn't work
then the A word that we were talking about last week. Yeah. Then that should be a no-go as well. Then all of that legislation should be kicked out, and you should be able to. Then you can't harm the unborn at that point, because then you're harming somebody else, right?
That's the comparison I always draw. That's what I was going to say. The most offensive thing about this whole thing is the fact that your body agency is enough to kill an unborn child in the womb, but you don't have enough body agency to choose when you can have an unsuffocated breath. I think that's offensive.
Well, and then here's another one. They just brought in all of that legislation. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's the choice to die stuff.
Yeah,
end of life, whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe. So then that has to be taken out as well.
The medical assistance in dying. Well, no, because they say that. Oh man, they use all sorts of stuff. They say that.
Well, if you don't have the bodily autonomy, then it's not your call. So you can't make that choice. Therefore, sorry.
Yeah, but they use all sorts of mental health arguments that have been tested or not tested necessarily in court, but like they say, oh, lawyers came up with this and blah, blah. And like lawyers coming up with things.
They say lots of things.
Yeah, right. Of course, right. It's so funny. Oh, lawyers came up with this. So
it's like the experts say.
Yes, the never
put somebody in a white coat and there's suddenly an expert. Yeah. Okay. So they failed school, but give them a white jacket. And,
yeah. I was getting. What is
they're the bottom of the class.
What do you call a person who graduated bottom of their class in med school? Doctor. Yeah. So yeah.
Probably.
Doctor.
The head of community health.
Dr. Moore. Military deployed to help enforce lockdown. This is in Sydney, Australia. On our October leaked email, they said there'd be military on the streets of Canada. We haven't seen that. I don't know if this is the same. Well, when they told the cops, remember when they told the cops in like March, April? Was it March, April? Yeah, February, March, April. I can't remember exactly. When they said, "Hey, you guys have the power to pull anybody over, and we've got this stay-at-home order, and if they're not out for legitimate reasons," but like going to Walmart was a legitimate reason, like. So everybody was like, and the cops said, "We're not enforcing that. That seems crazy." So maybe,
although Montreal was, but
Montreal went nuts, man. Montreal they're all over that. Montreal had they had the 8 p.m. curfew. You weren't allowed out unless you were going to get like medicine for your kid, which is different, right? But Doug Ford
or walking your dog and not your human.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a human that needs a walk.
Best story ever was the one of the woman walking her husband.
Yes, I saw it. Only in Canada, right?
Yep.
It's just a little kinky. Public voyeurism, right? Voyeurism. But
I'm thinking it's just a way around the rules.
Yes, he needed a walk, and so the COVID or the military deployment in Australia, is that, do you think, foreshadowing for here, or did that get tried and shut down with the police saying no? I don't know. I really don't.
I don't know, but here's another interesting one. You remember whenever the Liberals used Stephen Harper wants military in the streets? I mean, they were actually talking about clearing snow and stuff, but
those evil people, white supremacists.
Yes, wanting to clear snow for seniors. Oh my goodness. Well, but now we're talking about military in the street to force citizens to do things against their will.
Yes.
That's a huge, huge difference. Huge difference.
Yeah.
But nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, and with a population that is generally is fearful the right word? I don't know that fearful is the right word. Concerned. I think there are a lot of people who are concerned about this, but not like, I don't think there's enough people who believe that the Canadian government and or military would do anything to harm us. I think that everything that they've done has been carefully framed in a, we're doing this to help you. You should be grateful for our help. We've done everything we could possibly do in light of this terrible disaster. And then if somebody's like, can I ask a question about this terrible disaster? And they say, no, please be quiet. Your skin color is not dark enough, or not light enough, or whatever it is, your hair color, your eye color, whatever they want to target.
Yeah.
They say, no, we're not talking to you. And then they remove your channel and all that other stuff. So it's interesting. It's like Barack Obama saying the first scandal-free administration in, whatever. And then unless you look at the scandals that happened during Barack Obama's presidency.
Yeah, because you have to actually look at, somebody has to actually look at them. Right. But it's like Catherine McKenna, I keep going back to her because she said it best. Say it loud enough, long enough, and people will start to believe you. I mean, just keep going at it, and people will believe it. And so they've had over a year and a half now of being told the same lies over and over and over again. And so you have a populace who now, and I mean, you look at the stuff that's going on Twitter, you look at the stuff that's going on YouTube, who knows what the truth about anything is anymore, because there's so much disinformation. There you go.
That's it.
Here's all the stupid.
Yeah.
You make up your mind. What do you think is the most logical part of it? Like, what makes the most sense to you? Like, that's what now our critical thinking skills are on hyperdrive, because just, the few of us that are actually paying attention, because it's like, oh my goodness. Okay. So how do we parse this out? How do we figure which one is right? Which one is wrong? What's the truth? What's the, because it's so hard to tell. It's almost impossible. So think of like the people that are just normally going about their daily lives, trying to make a living
who aren't directly plugged into Twitter.
Exactly. Or don't go to it every day, or go to it for, cute cat kittens or cat pictures or something. Like, they have no clue what's going on.
And
to sort through it, it would be almost
it's
impossible.
Difficult, very difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult. And the thing is, for me as well, like I look at things through a lens of how I used to look at things and think things were kind of center. Like there's truth on both sides of this. Like you can spin this like this person's an awful person one way, or spin it they're an awful person another way. You know, like
you look at the words they're using and see what's sort of
but I'm more interested in like this is this person's job. This is what they said. Haha, like that's crazy. Like that seems weird. But more than that, also looking at the spin. Looking at what our newspapers are trying to make us believe, like because that's a good joke. Like when you say this is this person's job, this is what they said, but I'm bump ching. That's a good joke. But then you say, okay, this is honestly what they said, and this is what the newspaper said they said. Like,
yes,
that's a whole different joke, right? Like, and you're just like, what? How did you get that from this? Like,
well, there was somebody that said to me once that you can't believe what the newspapers are putting out. You have to go to the original source, and then you go to the original source and you look at the speech that they made or whatever, and you start going, whoa, like
Trump,
what the heck?
Trump was such a good example of this because like there are people who like my mom every single week. So I'd go to my parents' house for dinner on Saturdays. We're gonna have to wrap this up soon, but we would go to my parents' house for dinner on Saturdays, and every week my mom knew that I thought Trump was doing an okay job as the president, and every week she'd be like, oh, that Trump, blah blah blah, and she'd have some new thing. And like sometimes she was watching Ellen, and I was like, stop listening to Ellen. Ellen's not your friend, Mom. But she would dislike Trump, and then I would talk and like show her segments of whatever. I showed her the one where the crowd started chanting "We love you," like, and I was like. They really like no crowd I've ever seen in U.S. history has chanted "We love you" to a president that was asking for re-election. I'm like, this guy, they like him. Like, regardless of what you think, they do like him. And and so my mom was very like convinced. And then I'd break that by showing her the singing "We love you." And by the next week, it was back to like, oh, I hate that Trump guy. Did you hear what he said? And I said, no. What did Ellen show you that he said? Let me tell you what actually happened.
Let me show you the rest of the story.
Let me bring that out. Yeah.
And I would tell my dad something. Like I lived with him for a while, and I would tell him something 2 or 3 days before he would see it in the news, and he'd go, but they're saying this on the news. And I'm like, yeah, and I heard about it 3 days ago and told you the rest of the story. And then sure enough, he'd get this piece, and then 2 days later he'd be getting the rest of the story. And it's like, oh, you were right. I'm like, I told you the whole story a week ago.
Wow.
Like,
and I mean, again, how do you know, like, how could you possibly know what's true? Because by the time it's out into the rest of the zeitgeist, the rest of the public knows about the thing that you and I knew about 2 or 3 days ago, because we're looking at the speeches and what's actually happening as it happens. By the time it gets put all through that, there's brand new news that's way bigger, just new, more updated. And it's like, well, that doesn't even matter anymore.
Or like that they've completely flip-flopped what they were saying a week before.
Well, right. So in Ontario, same thing. Yeah, that happened this week. So yeah, it is this washing machine, and it does feel like a washing machine that we're being an information washing machine. I think that's going to be remember that. I should write that down. Maybe we'll just end the show.
Information washing machine.
The information washing machine that we are going through is relentless and unending and meant to confuse, meant to disorient, meant to make you look around and be like, I don't know where to look. Right. And so I think that's the whole goal. That's the whole purpose, just to confuse people. And then we'll let anybody do anything so long as it seems like they know what they're doing. Like,
well, my dad's also a magician. So whatever the hand's doing over here, you don't know what's going on over here. So my dad is an actual clown.
That's cool.
I could show pictures, but
we'll save that for a look back episode.
Sure.
Speaking moistly over the years.
Yes.
Very cool. All right, where can they find you?
Providing we have years.
Yeah. Oh, well, we're in the second year now. We get more views than Dean Blundell's show. I was trolling Dean Blundell on. We do much more views, like by a lot.
You look at some of these, like the mainstream journalists, and they don't get as much traction as really little people.
Like, who's signed up to these Patreon people? Like, who are you people? What is going on? Have you? Anyway. Have you heard of Twitter?
So true.
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, all right.
Yes.
Where can they find you? Final words or final thoughts on any of this?
Okay, so just go to my Linktree, gillydavis.com. So it's GILLYDAVIS.com, because I like to confuse everyone. And you'll find all my links there. I will be away for the next month. So I'm up to no good. Just that's all I'm saying. Fair enough. And so you won't see me anywhere for about a month, but then I will be back. I'll be back here with you, if you let me come back on September 9th.
If we're not mothballed from YouTube, we'll just move over to Rumble. We'll still do it. It'll be fun.
There are means and ways. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes.
If we have the will, we'll find the way.
All right. And for me, you can find me at CanadaPoly.com, and you can check out CanadaReport.co for my scratch pad. That's where I keep my links and things that I'm working on. And you can check out SpeakingMoistly.co. That's our back catalog and mine and Greg's back catalog. There were a lot of people who watched the one where we debated the Constitution for the PPC. There's a lot of views for that. I thought that was funny. What are you going to do? Right. Oh well. But check that out if you're interested. It's silly. I mean, blah. Anyway.
Well, it's one of the problems, and nobody wants to address it. It's maybe Derek Sloan would have joined if you had a constitution. The framework for being able to address problems.
Right in the last minute?
I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. No, we'll save it for next time.
Okay.
Next month.
Next month.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Here's the Prime Minister. Play us out. Okay. This never works. Sometimes this works. Maybe it's going to work this time. Oh, it worked!
Keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly. Speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly.
Oh, what a terrible image.